Some ridiculous things happened last night, and I have some unfinished business.
Oh, you son of a bitch!
MagSafe, the best invention ever for the iPhone, not for the reason you think. I am still very surprised that that actually worked, but I have my iPhone 14 Plus in my hand now, so I can do my video on it finally. So, morning, another day, another real world test. Today we're doing the Apple iPhone 14 Plus, and I am very far from where that bar was that I almost lost the phone in. I'm in Maui for Qualcomm, which is the chipset maker's annual Snapdragon Summit. But it doesn't technically start until tomorrow. So, as is the usual, let's explore today while we test out this phone. But, first things first. Coffee, check. And welcome to the PAIA Coffee Bar. It's a cute little outdoor cafe that also turns into a bar later on in the day in the tiny town of PAIA. That's basically one intersection with various shops and restaurants. Now the food is on point. Had a bacon, egg, and cheese, some honey Dijon mustard on it. Was good. And these days, you can always find a few work from home turned working from anywhere people typing away in the shade. And now let's talk about the iPhone 14 Plus. Essentially, it's an iPhone 14, but bigger. It has a 6.7 inch screen instead of a 6.1 inch, which happens to be the exact same size as the iPhone 14 Pro Max screen. And basically, this has now replaced the Mini. No one seemed to buy the smaller phone, and so now they went the other direction and made a larger one. But now you have the same choices in screen size with this regular series as you do with the Pro series. They're both 6.1 inches for the smaller models and 6.7 for the larger one. Interestingly enough, these also have the A15 Bionic chipset that was found in the iPhone 13. You only get the new A16 this year if you go for the Pro models, but the chipsets aren't that different anyway. There is one slight difference though. The A15 Bionic chipsets in the iPhone 14 models has one extra GPU core than last year. Not that you'll notice anything because of that. The screen brightness is also the same as last year with an 800 nits max brightness and 1200 for HDR and if you're in direct sunlight. So that's just a bit less bright than the Pro models. But because it is 60 Hertz and is a bigger phone with a bigger battery, it potentially could have the best battery life of any of the phones in this series. And Apple even claims that it has the best battery life of any iPhone ever, which we'll see today. And another side benefit of the larger phone is that the thermal design is apparently improved for less overheating, and also that helps with the battery. Now it does come in blue, purple, midnight, starlight, and product red. Last year also had a pink and green, but didn't have a purple. And now if you want to keep your phone looking like new and not all beat up like I did because I dropped it in that bar and scratched the crap out of it, well then maybe you should listen to today's sponsor, Rhino Shield.
Rhino Shield is known for making super protective and customizable cases and accessories. Right now they're having their biggest sale of the year for Black Friday with every product up to 60% off, from MagSafe cases with magnets that are twice as strong as Apple's to their solid suit no fuss cases, modular Mod NX cases for iPhone which allow you to mix and match a backplate with various case rim colors, and even screen protectors to pair with them all for 360-degree protection. They also have a ton of exclusive cases from NASA, PewDiePie, League of Legends, and a ton of others, and you can even design your own case with your own images and text. They have cases for all of the new iPhones, as well as many flagship Android phones as well, and they ship worldwide with free shipping for qualified orders, as well as a lifetime warranty for their cases. They also just recently launched a new grip that you can attach to the back of your phone, either with MagSafe for iPhones or a super strong reusable adhesive for the Pixel or other Android phones that can be used to prop up the phone in various ways, as well as be used to hold the phone by when you slide it open. And if you head to the link in the description below and use coupon code UNLOCKER-BF, you can get an extra 10% off on top of the Black Friday discounts and 10% off in general after Black Friday. Check them out at the link below again, and thanks again to Rhino Shield for sponsoring this video.
Okay, so now we're gonna actually drive across like the northeastern coast of Maui on what is called the Road to Hana. Hana being the town at the end
of the drive. And it's a very popular drive that a lot of people do when they come to Maui. And it is a very beautiful drive, but there is a lot of things you can stop off along the way and do that are also very pretty. Now, the drive itself, if you didn't get out of the car, is about 3 hours long. And we don't really have that much time today. So we're gonna see how far along this road we can make it and see what we can find.
Welcome to Twin Falls. Now, this was once home to a lot of cattle farms, actually, even as early as the 1800s. But in 1996, it was bought and turned into Wailele farms, Wailele being the Hawaiian word for waterfalls. The 36 acres were parceled up into 3 sections for the, at the time, 6 shareholder local farmers that lived and worked here. And this area, called Twin Falls, is a small area on that farm that has always been known to locals, even back in the 1800s, as a place to cool off during the summer in the waterfalls and the rivers that are here. It was apparently once very muddy and hard to get to, but now there's a small parking lot that you can easily drive to. There's also a small farm stand that's been here since the late 90s that sells various produce and other things, some of which actually comes from the local farms here. Now, I didn't realize it till I got here, but I've been here before. Years ago, back in 2017 actually, when myself and a small group of tech YouTubers who you might know all rented a van and headed up here, led by Joshua Vergara, a buddy of mine, to kind of check it out. It's kind of cool to be here. Not much has actually changed, except, well, that the parking lot now costs $10 to park in. But while we're here, it seems like a good place to talk about the cameras on the new iPhone 14 Plus. And compared to the iPhone 13, the cameras are slightly different. We have a 12 megapixel 26mm equivalent f1.5 main camera compared to the 12 megapixel 26mm f1.6 on the old iPhone 13. But the sensor is apparently larger. Apple is actually claiming 49% better low-light performance versus the iPhone 13. We have 1.9 micron size pixels instead of 1.7 and a slightly faster aperture, and so in theory should do better in low light and also have slightly better dynamic range. And we have the same ultra-wide camera as we did on the iPhone 13 with the same 13mm equivalent 120-degree field of view and f2.4 aperture. As for the selfie camera, we actually have a 12 megapixel, same as last year, but f1.9 aperture, so slightly brighter than the f2.2 aperture on last year. We also have autofocus as well, which last year did not. A lot of people have actually been saying that they notice a bigger difference in the selfie camera between this model and last year compared to the main cameras, actually. Now, Apple does also use what they call their Photonic Engine, which is essentially their processing happens much earlier in the photo processing pipeline, where the raw data is being used as opposed to further on. Bottom line, Apple says that because of that, they're getting twice the performance in low light as last year's model, which you can be the judge of throughout this video. And lastly, we do also have action mode, which is essentially their extra electronic stabilization that they do on the cameras. It forces you to shoot in 2.8K instead of 4K, and also requires a lot more light and crops in on the image. But it does actually do a very good job in brighter light conditions, at least, of really stabilizing the footage. Like, even if you run, it does a pretty good job of it, making it seem kind of at least like it's on a gimbal.
We did not make it very far on the road to Hana. Glad we at least got to see some waterfalls, but the sun is already going down, and I'm actually pretty far already from the hotel. It's gonna take me a while to get back. So let's find something to eat.
This is Nuka. Nuka is the Japanese word for the bran or the shavings that come from the outer brown layer of rice during the process of turning the rice from brown to white by milling or polishing it. The nuka can actually then be mixed with water, salt, and kelp and can be used to then pickle things, like vegetables. Now Nuka, the restaurant here, actually mills their own rice and uses the nuka from that to make their own pickled vegetables. They also exclusively use nuka oil, aka rice bran oil, to fry anything that needs frying in the restaurant. Now it's an izakaya, which is basically a small Japanese informal bar serving small plates. It's kind of the equivalent of the British pub or the Spanish tapas restaurant. The owners are actually very adamant about buying as many things local as they possibly can, whether that's fishermen or farms and the like. And the food here is super simple, but very fresh and just very good. In fact, all of the fish in their nigiri menu is locally caught, minus the salmon, because salmon doesn't live around here. Now while we're here, let's talk a bit more about the iPhone 14 Plus and the key differences between it and the iPhone 13 series. Now firstly, Apple showed off crash detection, which essentially uses sensors within the device to determine whenever you've had an accident and then will automatically call the authorities for you after a certain period of time if you don't cancel it. Now this is a feature that's available on all of the iPhone 14 models as well as all of the Apple Watches. Now we also have satellite connectivity for emergency SOS, which basically means that if you don't have signal, it can access a satellite nearby and use that to send very basic messages to the authorities to try to get you help. As mentioned, there is also increased thermal performance on this model, but is also easier to repair, apparently, as the black glass is now fully removable and is simply secured by 2 screws. And lastly, a thing that bothers me, but probably because I switch phones all the time for work, as you guys know, is the fact that we don't have any SIM card trays anymore. So that means any of the iPhone 14 models that you buy in the United States, they only take eSIM or electronic SIM. Now that means you just have to use the setup process and download a SIM from one of the carriers or get a QR code from them or get it some other way digitally. And honestly, for the most part, besides the few hiccups that this had when it first launched, most of those have been fixed. It's actually fine. The bigger issue comes when you want to just take your SIM card out and put it into another phone. You can no longer do that. You have to actually go buy a new SIM card to go from an iPhone to a thing. But again, that isn't me problem. It's not going to bother most of you. The thing that will bother some of you, though, is when you travel. Normally, you would just maybe grab another SIM card in the country you were traveling to, pop that in the phone, and you get much cheaper service over there compared to roaming on the phone here. Now, there are solutions to this where you can actually download apps that give you eSIMs that you can then download to the phone based on the country you're in, but there's a lot less choices than there is if you have just a regular SIM, and then also some countries and some carriers just don't have eSIMs yet. They're just not that prevalent. So it'll cause some issues while traveling, potentially in the short term, but over enough period of time, obviously this will become more prevalent, and then there won't be any issues.
Rained while I was eating? It's something I've noticed about Maui. It rains for like 4 seconds, torrential downpour, and then it's done.
In a quarter mile, turn left onto State Highway 36.
Okay, back at the hotel. First off, battery life. It is 9:30 p.m. and I took it off at 8 a.m. and it is at 14%. Now that may not seem like a lot, but today was not a normal day. It was a real world test. I filmed a ton on this phone, took a ton of photos, and the fact that it's even still alive right now, and it's the only iPhone 14 model to make it through one of these videos without having to be charged, much earlier in the night, I'd say it probably is the best battery life you can get in one of the new iPhone 14s. So there's that. If you're curious though, here's my screen on time and my battery usage for today. And again, since it's not a normal day, here's another day that wasn't a real world test day. Now, interestingly, we already know at the time of me making this video that this phone did not sell very well. That might have something to do with the fact that it launched 3 weeks after the other 3 iPhones, which is weird. And already we have industry sources saying that Apple is cutting production on this model specifically by about 40%. Now, Christmas is still coming up, so maybe we'll see a boost by then, but If Apple's already cutting things and that is true, then that is just, a sign that it's not selling as well as they thought it would, regardless at this point. And honestly, I don't know, it kind of makes sense, I guess, that this phone exists. It's, now kind of the lower tiered Pro Max, whereas the regular 14 is the lower tiered Pro. Each of those has about a $200 difference in price between its comparable sized model. So maybe if you wanted a Pro Max, but you didn't want to spend the extra $300 between the price difference between the 14 and the Pro Max, now you have this option to save you $100 maybe. The only thing I could probably think of is if battery life is the most important thing to you, because this will outlast all three of the other devices, at least in my tests, and I've heard other reviewers say the same. So there you go. You let me know though in the comments below. Always appreciate hearing from you guys. Also, if you're not already, please subscribe and ding the bell so you get notified when I do new videos. Bunch more places that we're going to explore coming up soon. Also, you can check out the real world test playlist. We've gone to a lot of cool places. So if you want, check that out. Shout out again to Rhino Shield for sponsoring this video. Again, I will leave a link below to where you can check out their Black Friday deal. But there you go. I am still jet lagged from the journey, so I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed. Good night.
So many mosquitoes. Oh.
Bug spray. Bring bug spray. That's what I didn't do. And if you come here, that is what you should do. Above all else, bug spray. I'm getting eaten alive.